Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Carbon Database Initiative CaDI live event this morning. I make it 9:30, so we'll get things underway. Just before we start the session, I should remind everybody that it is being recorded. We'll upload the recording to YouTube, of course, and send the link to everybody. Pardon me. Most of you will have noticed on the slide in front of you there's a QR code. If you scan that with your phone, you'll be able to go to a short poll. I know a lot of you have already done it, but if you do that, that'll be great, and we'll have a look at those results in a moment. For those of you who don't know me, my name is John Buckley. I'm the MD of Carbon Footprint. I'm joined today by two of our consultants, Miles Howard and Stephen Laurent, who'll be telling us about CaDI in a little moment. One moment, I'll go to the first slide. As a top level introduction, for those of you who aren't aware of who Carbon Footprint is, we're a carbon management business, climate change solutions company that's been around for the best part of 20 years now. So we've got a lot of experience in all things carbon. We have lots of brands that some of you will already be using. CaDI obviously is one of them that we're showing off today. There's Sustrax, which is our carbon calculator software, which is online. CRISP, which is our carbon ratings insight platform, so you can understand how well all the benefits of various carbon offset projects. We run the Freedom Flight Prize, which is a prize for the first truly zero carbon transatlantic flight across the Atlantic, and we also have the net zero standard that we run as well. So a lot of you will be aware of that already, but for those of you new to the business, I'll give you a bit more of an understanding of what we do. We work with well over 1,000 companies a year in consultancy mode, helping them understand their carbon emissions and reduce their carbon emissions. And we have many more companies that transact with us online as well. So during the session today, we will be taking questions. We'll have a question and answer session at the end, just so that people are aware of that. So if you do have any questions, please do write them in the chat, and we'll pick those up towards the end of the meeting. So in a moment, we'll have a look at the poll results, see what you guys have said before we get started. Then I'll hand over to Stephen, who's going to give us an introduction to CaDI and tell us a little bit about what's new on CaDI, for those that you already know a bit about CaDI. Then we'll have a deep dive into the international electricity factors that we've just uploaded, the new 2025 ones, and then we'll show off our new supply chain tool, which I think a lot of you will find really useful for getting those scope 3 carbon emissions in a lot more detail through your supply chain. And then, like I say, at the end we'll have the question and answer session. So here we go. This is the poll results. I haven't seen these yet, so this is my first time looking at them. We've had 46 responses. That's great. Thanks everybody who's put a response on. The first question was, how much have you used CaDI so far? Not many are saying regularly, but a few people are saying concentrated use, especially at the time of assessing emissions. That's good. A few times, quite a few people, that's good. So quite a lot of people already know about it. And then just once, just a few, and then I haven't used it at all. So we've got quite a few people who are obviously new to CaDI today. So this is a great place for you to come and learn all about what it's all about. Let's move down to the next one. So what do you currently use CaDI for? So this is for the people who have already used it. So most people have gone for the international emissions factors. So that's great to see that, because obviously that's one of the focus topics for today, to show you the new ones. Some people are publishing their own emissions on CaDI. Great. That's we want to get more and more people doing that and make the data publicly available. Look for other companies' emissions. Yep. Look at products and materials emissions. That's one of the things that we'll be showing you very briefly when we hand over to Stephen, and work on supply chain emissions. And yeah, for those that are looking at supply chain emissions, I think you're going to be blown away with the new system that we've got today to show you. Number 3, what are you most wanting to learn during the session? So how to calculate supply chain emissions. So that's good, because that's what, like I say, that's one of the focus topics. How to publish your own results. We're probably not going to go into that in too much detail today, but we'll sort of hopefully shine you or point you in the right direction so you can look at how to do that. How to navigate databases, we'll certainly do that. Look at that today. How to compare business emissions, we'll maybe touch on that a little bit. How to calculate carbon emissions, not so much of that today. We've had an event in the past though that's certainly focused on the Sustrax software that will point you in the direction of that meeting, so you can re-watch that YouTube video if you need to. There's obviously international factors as well, which we already mentioned, so that's all good. And then we asked a final question of what other carbon database sources have you used in the past, and it's about just less than half have not really used any other carbon databases, and then 54% of you have used others, and I'm sure there are a lot of sorts of details. Can we have a look at those? Yeah, we can see that the ones that people have used, government published ones, obviously the UK government factors, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of. The US EPA, yeah, they're all good. Our World in Data's good. I can see quite a few sources of stuff that we use. iTrack, AIB residual emissions, that's good. Climatic, yeah. So yeah, lots of good things here. And there we go. So they're the poll results. So at this point, I think I hand it over to Stephen, who's going to now tell us all about, sort of give us a top level introduction to CaDI before we do the deep dive into the international emissions factors and the supply chain stuff. So Stephen, over to you.
Thank you, John. So first of all, good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining CaDI Live today. Hopefully some of you had the pleasure of attending our previous live event back in January, and that gave a great overview of what CaDI is all about and its features. Doesn't matter though if this is your first session with us, because I'm going to basically recap that first session for you, go over its key features, and then mention a bit about the new features as well. I'll then hand back over to John so you can run through the international electricity factors, which we've got on there. Okay. So the Carbon Database Initiative is a global, free-to-use and free-to-disclose platform for company and product carbon footprints, net zero declarations, and emissions factors. It was established as our one-stop shop for greenhouse gas emissions reporting and disclosure based around Carbon Footprint's belief that company emissions data should be publicly accessible and free to view and never obscured behind a paywall. Currently, we have over 1,800 company disclosures. These are comprised of verified data from our own clients and submissions from companies who have completed their own assessments and wish to publish their results. Any verified disclosures get access to our verified CaDI stamp. So CaDI is a fantastic transparency tool. It helps companies openly share their emissions and show how they're progressing towards net zero. This not only builds confidence with investors and stakeholders, but also allows businesses to learn from each other's emissions reduction strategies and even improve their own supply chain data. The CaDI platform lets you compare your emissions with others in your industry, offering fresh ideas for cutting your own emissions. Plus, by encouraging more companies to disclose, it of course makes it easier to get real supplier emissions data in place of spend data. This will greatly improve how everyone can track their Scope 3 emissions. So on screen now, you'll see a selection of the sources that we use to generate our electricity factors. We've sort of assimilated these to create our own products, materials, and spend factor databases. John is going to run you through the electricity factors shortly, so I'm not going to step on his toes now by running through those ones. But what I will do is I'll take control of the screen and I'll give you a quick demo of how to access the spend factors and then the product factors. Okay, so I'm just sharing my screen now. Hopefully everyone can see that. Perfect. Okay, so we currently have more than 9,000 spend factors available for use on here. These cover the top 40 highest GDP countries globally, which can be found either through the ribbon at the top up here, through our emissions factors, or through clicking through these new icons that we've got in place here, which have sort of streamlined our navigation process a bit. So we'll start with the spend factors. We click through here for it to load up. So with the spend factors, it's as simple as entering your keyword relating to your whichever category you're looking for. So for instance, if I put in something like fish, We'll do it for the United Kingdom. Hit the search, and then it should bring up a list of all the available factors relating to that product. You can pick the most relevant one for you, click the sign in and view button, and then it will bring up the source of the data and all the previous factors that have been available. So if we go back now, we can try another example. For instance, this includes services as well. So we can do legal services, search for that one. We've got a couple of options there for Defra and ONS. And again, you can click the sign button and it will bring up all the previous factors for you, the units and where they're from. So if we go back to the welcome page now, it's a very similar process with our products. We've got over 3,500 product factors on here now. So this is going to be the perfect place to go when you're assessing your sort of scope 3 purchase goods and services emissions if you have activity data available. Or you could even do things like construction projects and events and that sort of thing where you have materials quantities. So similar to the spend factors, you can either access them through the products bit up here, or you can click through the buttons down here. We'll go through the top this time. So we go to the products factors. Once these ones load up, all you need to do again is enter the keyword in the top. So this one we have things like, we'll give a sort of company example. So we've got some Lenovo laptops and things on here. So if we search for that, it comes up with specific emissions factors for each Lenovo computer. So if you click view, it'll take you through to this page. It gives you some information about where the factor's from, where we sourced that from, the unit of that factor, and the embodied emissions there as well. So again, if we do another example of that, perhaps a more generic one, something like paper, search for that. It'll bring up a whole long list. This is from a variety of databases, so you can pick the one most relevant to you from the country that you want. You click view on that. Again, a similar sort of page as the last one, gives you the source of that factor, the embodied emissions, and yeah, again, where that's from. Excellent. So if we could go back to the slides. Perfect. Okay, so this slide here, just letting you know that we've got plenty of other materials available for CaDI, whether you've heard of our previous live sessions or not, or managed to explore our YouTube channel or our website. We've got all the previous live sessions are uploaded on there, and we've got lots of YouTube short videos with tutorials of how to disclose your carbon emissions, how to search for factors, that sort of thing. Okay. So the eagle-eyed amongst you might have noticed when I was sharing my screen there, if you've used CaDI before, that we've got a new addition to the ribbon at the top there, which is our supply chain footprint calculator. Miles is going to give you a run through of that later. So again, I'm not going to run through that now. But our other additions since our previous sessions, aside from adding a lot more factors and disclosures, are sort of counters on our homepage, which you can see in the bottom right of the screen there. Again, that helps us sort of navigating around, makes the system look a bit nicer. And the other main addition we've done to add a load more companies to the system is we've introduced an ESOS estimated emissions function. So what this means is that we can take the ESOS tech data, so their scope 1 and 2 and business travel energy consumption, from freely available published data, and we can estimate that company's emissions based on that. The benefit of this is that we can have way more companies on CaDI. So when it comes to things like reporting your supply chain emissions, that data's there. If they're one of your suppliers, perhaps you can go there, use that data, which Miles will explain more about later. So yeah, I'm now going to hand you back over to John, who's going to run you through the electricity factors.
Superb. Thank you very much, Stephen, for that. Yeah, so let's run through the 2025 electricity factors now. So let's go to the next slide. So we've updated, like I said at the beginning, we've updated the international electricity factors now and published the 2025 factors. They're all live on CaDI for you to use. They were updated a couple of days ago. And we've also updated, included the UK government factors as well for the electricity. So we'll show you those in a second. But before we do that, I thought it'd be worth just skimming through what the methodology is and how we've come up with the international emissions factors. Basically, there's a methodology document that you can access on the CaDI platform. It's very straightforward. I'll point that out to you in a second. There's a link here that will take you to the appropriate page, and then you can download it there. There's a very top level summary. I've managed to boil it down amazingly into 6 bullet points. I think it was quite complicated into 6 bullet points. So what we do to calculate the factors is we use country specific fuel mix data for electricity generation. The data is typically from 2023, so it's 2 years old, and this is quite normal for calculating electricity factors because it takes a little bit of time for the data to come through and then to do the calculations. So if you look at the Defra or the UK government emissions factors, for instance, you'll see that they're actually generated from 2023 data as well. So we've done ours as 2023 to be in line with them. We could actually already do 2020, do it from 2024 data and produce the 2026 factors already, but we want to try and stay in line with the UK, US, and the rest of the world. So we've done it with that 2-year gap. We, as well as looking at the fuel mixes, we then have to account for the power station efficiencies or inefficiencies, and that's how efficient a power station is from burning the fuel to being able to turn it into electricity. We use the latest UK government factors that came out just a couple of days ago, the 2025 factors for turning the fuels and the efficiencies into the actual carbon emissions, and we can do that for generation and well to tank. The transmission and distribution loss is a little bit trickier to do. The transmission and distribution loss, for those that don't know, what happens is that we do lose some energy through the power lines as the energy gets transmitted to the users. So the amount that actually gets consumed is actually less that gets generated, and that difference is called the transmission and distribution loss. So we can calculate that based on like I say, the difference between what's generated and what's consumed. The tricky bit is always getting the data to do this accurately. For Europe, fortunately, Eurostat provides that data, which is amazing. For the rest of the world, it is available, but not under a free-to-use license. So it's hard for us to use that. So for the majority of the world, we've used the last publicly available data that the UK government produced, which was back into 2015, which showed the generation and transmission and distribution losses for most countries around the world. And we've used that same ratio. And the reason why we think this is a good approach is that kind of most grids don't change vastly over time, so the losses are likely to be about the same. So using that theory, it works out about right. But this is one area that we do hope to improve significantly in future years. So just so you're aware that we're working on how to do this a little bit better and more accurately with data that we're allowed to use. The residual mix factor is another thing that we produce. So for those that don't know, if you're doing dual reporting, so most people would be doing location-based reporting, which will be just using the standard, if you like, if you're in the UK government factors. But if you're accounting for the actual energy that you're buying, and if you're on a renewable energy tariff, for instance, and you've got lower carbon emissions per kilowatt hour of electricity you're using, if you're doing that on one site, then for other sites where you're not using the same approach, you should ideally use a residual mix value, which is basically the emissions factor once you've taken out all the contracted energy from the grid. So that's sort of kind of roughly how it all works. Like I say, there's a methodology document that you can have a look at online. The key improvements from 2024 to 25, the majority of it actually is done exactly the same way. So the methodology for 2025 pretty much mirrors that of 2024, apart from we have made a couple of improvements. One is around the residual fuel mix information that I've just mentioned. Before we did a ratio type approach, and now we've actually done it on actual fuel mix data, which makes it much more accurate. So you'll see an increasing accuracy for this year's residual emissions factors. And for transmission and distribution losses, we've now got access to the Eurostat data, which makes that easier to calculate as well for European countries, rather than having to rely on the old ratio approach that I mentioned earlier. So once again, it becomes a much better system. So the other thing that we've done is we've improved the layout of how it all looks, which I'll show you now actually. So I'm going to switch over to where is that? The CaDI system. Here we go. So to get to the international electricity factors, there's a couple of ways of doing it. But if you go to the emissions factors at the top, you can see the country electricity factors tab link here. So if you click that, it brings you to this page. You can then search for a country. I'm going to just say United for a second, and it'll bring up a few. So for instance, we can now click on United Kingdom, and we can click the little I to view the factors. And as soon as that pops up, you'll see that the latest factors appears towards the top of the page. So that's the 2025 emissions factors. For the UK, these are actually not the ones we calculate. We've actually published the UK government ones, but I'll show you how close our calculations were to theirs in a moment. See this big friendly button here? This is to download the methodology document that I've just mentioned. And then this little I here shows you a little bit more detail of the latest factors. So here you can see that we've got generation, transmission, distribution losses, and the well to tank information. But if you click that, you get a little bit more as well. So you get the well to tank of the transmission and distribution, and also the residual fuel mix factor. Once again, the methodology document that goes with the factors, and the fuel mix actually goes to make it up, which is all good. So if you go back to this page, you can scroll down a little bit. You have access to all the past factors as well for the UK from 2019, and the same level of detail can be seen for those. And if you scroll down a little bit more, we've charted to show how the emissions factor has changed over time. So for the UK, you can see it's gone down from about 0.255 down to 1.177 since 2019. This is just the generation factor, so it's this column, but obviously if we were to plot the transmission, distribution, loss and well to tank, you'd also see a similar sort of trend, downward trend. Scrolling below that, you can see we've got the generated electricity by year in terawatt hours for the UK. And you see there's actually a downward trend in terms of the amount that we're using, which is good. And then you can also see the fuel mix that's actually being used within the calculations. So on this one, just to point stuff out, so at the top you've got gas. I'll start from the bottom. Sure, we've got the renewables at the bottom. So we've got hydro, bioenergy, solar, a little bit of solar. You see the wind percentage going up. So that's partly why our carbon emissions have come down, because we got generated more wind power last year. We've got nuclear power there, 14%. And then there's a little bit of other fossil fuels, which will probably be oil. Coal is a very small amount, and hopefully going down to zero in the near future, and gas at 34%. For those that you've been watching the news over the last few days, there's been talk about new nuclear power stations in the UK. When they come online, which I believe is by 2035, it will effectively double our nuclear, the percentage of nuclear energy on the grid, which will then eat away at the kind of gas, and we should see the emissions factors come down from there. The UK government, I believe, does have a target to have a zero carbon electricity grid by 2035. What we can see is that the new nuclear element, will feed into that, but it won't achieve it on its own. So we still do need to be putting in more renewables and other stuff to achieve that goal. But that's all good. So you get a feel for the data that's available there. And then for the UK, and this is only for the UK, we show fuel mix databases from different suppliers. So you can see different energy tariffs will come with different grams of CO2 per kilowatt hour. So, and you can see if you click on one of these, you get a bit more information, even down to the kind of screen grab, which shows it from the energy provider's website. So there's lots of good material here for you to have a look at and search around. If I go back and let's click on the United States. The United States is a little bit different again, because the United States has obviously states within the country. So once again, for the US, it has the latest factor, has the past factors, shows the generation, how the generation factor is changing over time, shows how much energy they're using across the country and the fuel mix. But the difference bit is at the bottom here, you have the emissions per state as well. So once again, these have been updated to 2025 emissions for people to use. And if you click on that, it takes you through, shows you the transmission, distribution, wells to tank, and the wells to tank of the transmission and distribution losses. So lots of interesting and useful information there to help you calculate your carbon emissions. And obviously we have this data now in the system for any country, so you could pick any country you wanted to at random and search for it and find the latest factors, and it's all there for you to get ready and use. So what I'll do now is I'll flick back to the slides, which I believe is here. So they're the examples I've shown. I did mention that for the UK ones, we have done one thing, is we've actually published the UK government factors rather than our own, because we know that lots of people are required to use the UK government factors. But I thought it'd be useful just to show you how accurate our calculations are compared to theirs. So this table here shows our generation scope 2 factor. The UK gives one is 1.177. Ours is just a little bit higher. It's less than 0.2% difference. So it gives us quite a bit of confidence that our methodology is pretty good. The UK government also accounts for imported energy as well, which our factor hasn't done this year. So that will be part of the reason for the difference. The T&D, transmission distribution loss, our calculations are based on the 2023 losses from Duke's database. I can remember what the D stands for in Duke, but it's the UK energy supply data, effectively. There's obviously a bit of difference here. I'm not totally convinced that the UK government updated their factor totally this year, so that might be the reason why. For the well to tank, we are slightly different, but the UK factor is based on 21 data, whereas ours we've updated to 2023 data, so we're pretty confident that ours is more accurate than the UK government one. But we haven't published ours because I know everybody likes to use the UK government factors. And the residual factor, the UK government doesn't produce it within the greenhouse gas emissions factor set, so ours is kind of on its own there to use as you wish. So yeah, just a reminder really that these factors are there for you to use for free for individuals and for your own company use. We do have commercial licensing options available if you want to put it into some software, or if you're a consultancy business and you want to use it to assess your clients' emissions, then come and have a chat to us. It's very reasonably priced, a lot cheaper than other providers of similar data. So happy to have a chat to anybody who'd like to use it more on a commercial basis. CaDI is all about being free to use, but we do like to make a little bit of money if we can on certain bits where we know people are going to get a financial benefit from it, because it helps us maintain and further development CaDI. So that's me. So that's the international emissions factor bit done. So I'll hand over to Miles. If you've got any questions on the international emissions factors, do put them in the chat, and what I'll do is we'll pick up on those towards the end of the session. So Miles, over to you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so Lovely to be here. I'm Miles Howard, the software development manager over here at Carbon Footprint. What I'm going to be showing today is the supply chain tool. This is our first of our CaDI premium tools. So all of the data on CaDI is free to use, publicly available. But this will be a calculation part of the system. It is going to be free to our Sustrax MX users, but then there will be on request, if you reach out to us, we can give you a quote to actually use this calculation functionality. What I'm going to be talking about today shows off the platform, but also talks about how the data can be also be used freely. So John, if we go to the first slide. So the first thing I wanted to discuss is why did we build this tool now? What's the problem we're solving? So essentially what we're doing is trying to help people calculate their scope 3 broader emissions following the greenhouse gas protocol. And often we find people get poor supplier engagement, and they often find there's quite complex forms. So sometimes people make them themselves. They're sending out, say, Microsoft forms, but they don't know what to ask, what to collect. They might finish a broad scale collection and then get the data back and realize they missed something. So what we want to provide here is a simple format, one page. We don't want it to be 500 pages for your suppliers. We want people to fill it in. And then what we're doing is providing this calculation level at the end, and that will help with, as I say here, data paralysis. So you don't want to get the data in and then say, what do I do with it? They've only given me half the data I needed, or I don't have everything available, or I only got 5% of responses. So within the platform, there's a layer of calculation that I'll show when I get to it. So if we go on to the next slide. A bit about the solutions. As I mentioned, we want it to be a simple data collection form. It is a one-pager, collects all the data you need, no subsequent tabs, and it can be built into your supply chain forms. It can be sent out in an email. It has the calculation levels off the back of it that uses both the primary data that you get from your suppliers, but also the reason we've built this into CaDI and why we thought it was a good fit for CaDI is we have all this secondary data available. We have public disclosures. We have the spend factors, which can be used. Even if you can't get 100% response rate, there's a lot of ways to calculate using the data we have available in CaDI. As I say, this can be done yourselves by just going on CaDI, getting data, but we're building in this layer to help you work through it. So, and then it gives you actual insight. So once you've got your data, you've done your calculations, you'll see your data output, and I'll show that in a demo in 1 second. And then if you're on our Sustrax platforms, the data can be transferred over to Sustrax, or it can just be downloaded and used in your own sort of reporting, however you do that. So let me just share up the platform so I can do a quick demo. Lovely. So let me put this onto the correct screen. This is the front page of the CaDI system. What you'll be able to see here is, as I mentioned briefly, you'll have your supplier data you can run a calculation on. But as said, you do have a lot of public data. Stephen showed sort of over 10,000 companies. You also have the 9,000 sort of spend factors, and they can be used over many countries. So what I'm going to talk through now, I'm going to show you how you can add suppliers. I'm going to briefly pass over to Stephen, who's going to show the form and sort of how to fill that in and what your suppliers will see. And then I'll talk about the emission breakdowns and how we do the calculations. Because like I say, if you don't get perfect data back or they only fill in part of it, I'll show you how that reflects in the system. So firstly, what you'll do when you come here, we've got various places where it will tell you the different workflows and how to use the tool, as well as guidance on who are you sending this to. Are you sending this to everyone? Are you trying to send it to, following the greenhouse gas protocol, just your top 80% of your suppliers? So there's a lot of guidance around that within the platform. But what we need to do then is, so you're going to add a supplier. So you're just going to put your supplier name, so the company name, their contact details, and who you know on their side. Once you've then added, it will appear in this top table. From here, you can send an automated email that just goes straight from the system to them, lets them know all about the process and gives them the link to your form. So you have a bespoke link to your form, or you can optionally view the templated email here, where you can copy this and send it yourselves, or you can use this supplier form link So what happens with this link is once you send that link to them, any forms filled in there will reflect into your system. Even if you hadn't added them as suppliers, you might not want to go through and add all your suppliers onto the system. You might just want to send a broad email to everyone and say, here's our supplier form, please fill it in. Or what we have seen some people doing, so this is already rolled out to a few of our Sustrax users. What they're doing is building it into their sort of procurement policy, so you can iframe that link, so you have it available, so you can embed it in any of your procurement policies, or you can just have the link sort of sent out to everyone. So what I'm going to do quickly is pass over to Stephen, who's going to show off this form in detail.
Okay, I'll just grab the screen quickly. Hope everyone can see that. So yes, here's a form I've previously filled in. So of course, the idea of this is it's going to rely on your supplier having calculated their emissions. So if they've already done that already, amazing. That'll be very straightforward for them to fill out. If not, we've got these options at the top here. If you click on this button, it will take you through to our free calculators, where the supplier can fill in their scope 1 and 2 data and some sort of upstream scope 3, so they can get an overview of their emissions and fill it out in this form for you. So once they've got hold of their emissions, they can come back to this very nicely color-coded form. They start by filling out the simple company details. I've done it for a fictitious company, my own name, Laurent Limited. Put it in the company name. You can select which country in the drop-down and which industry category that is. Gone for quite a random one, but we're going to be ice cream manufacturers for the day. So once you've filled out that, you can select the option if it's been verified by a third party, and it gives you the option to put that verifier name in there. So it may well be that we've verified it, so you can put carbon footprint in there. And there will also be a chance in a minute to upload evidence files, so we can see that report, or you can from your suppliers. So it just needs some contact details on the reporting period in here, very simple information, before moving on down to the intensity metrics. So this one, the sort of bare minimum they'd be asked to fill in is their number of employees and the financial turnover. So this is so you can calculate an emissions per employee and per £1 million turnover, or whichever currency it happens to be in, because we've got that on the drop down here as well. You can also add additional metrics. So for this company, for instance, if they want to know the emissions per ice cream produced, you can enter that in there and then enter how many you produced in the year. So as I mentioned already, this is the evidence section. You can do file uploads, or you can add links to sort of SharePoint and that sort of thing, or reports published online. Okay, so we go back up to the top now. So this second column is all to do with filling out the emissions. The sort of bare minimum that they'd be asked to do is their scope 1 and 2, and ideally the upstream scope 3 categories if they've done that. So you can start by going through with your scope 1 emissions, scope 2 location and market based. If they're the same, or you haven't assessed it, you can just pop the same number in those boxes there. You then get the option to select this if they haven't assessed the scope 3. That will get rid of all the unnecessary other scope 3 boxes at that point, but ideally they will have assessed that. So you can continue through the form, split between location and market based throughout. If you don't have that divide, you can just pop the same numbers in. So that's total scope 3, and it goes down to a split between upstream and downstream. Again, if you don't know that, you can select that box and it'll get rid of it for you. So here, yeah, you can split between location and market base. I'll just pop this number in here, because then that will bring up your third column, which is the exact categories that have been assessed. So you can select from drop downs whether this has been fully, partially, not assessed, that sort of thing. That's the same for the upstream and the downstream categories. So if we put that in downstream there, that'll bring up this, your categories 9 to 15, and you can again go through the same process with that. So once all the emissions data is in there, it asks some questions about whether they've offset and if they've got targets set. So if they have offset, you can check that box, enter the total offset in there, and that will all get sent back over with the form to you. And again, that's very similar with the targets. If they don't have targets, it will just look like that. If they do, you can tick it, put their target year, and even set a link to the file or choose where that's linked to. So yeah, once that's all done, you can hit submit, and that will ping its way back over to your requesting company and Miles is going to show you what to do at that point.
Perfect. Yeah, so that is our form. So the beauty of the form is that is complete once you've filled in that and click submit. The data is sent to the company. You do then get a next option on the page to make your own CaDI account. You don't have to do that. You also see on the left of this, there is the option to publish this data on CaDI if your supplier wants to do that. Again, it's not needed in order to use the data by yourselves. It's just an option if they want to publish the data there. So yeah, the whole point in this form is trying to get it down to one side. As you saw, there was levels of, I don't know this, I don't know that. If those are selected, the calculations will still run, but what I'll show in the emissions breakdowns, it will tell you what level was calculated. So if you get data back and it's just scope 1 and 2, and you know that the company is going to have large scope 3 emissions based on the industry, or we can guide you on that, we might suggest actually we wouldn't use that calculation. We'd recommend you use this spend sector calculation instead. So there's different levels and different layers. The best thing would be if you got your scope 1, 2 emissions and your scope 3 upstream. But yeah, the calculator will focus on the best it has available to complete the calculation. So yeah, let me grab the screen back and I can just show how this is then calculated and broken down in the system. So once you start receiving data back, it will appear here. You may end up with more disclosures than you have in terms of companies you've had it here. As I mentioned, it's not, you don't always have to send it through the platform, so you can just send the form out and just receive multiple data sets back here. So you'll see their emissions and you can go and view and see their full breakdown. But what you're going to want to do is go back here. And then you're going to be calculating through these three methods. So if you've got your supplier data back, you go to My Supplier Disclosures. Essentially, you're going to put in a reason for the spend. So we had ice creams. Stephen didn't actually submit that, so I won't see him here, but I will be able to choose what I'm buying. So is it a purchase good? What section is it? So I'm going to say purchase good. I'm going to say this is going to go into my 2024. Choose my disclosure. So I'm just going to choose the top one. How much did I spend on ice creams? Let's say I spent £45. Which currency? And then you do also have the additional metrics options. So with this company, these are the additional metrics. So if Stephen had entered 5,000 ice creams, I can say I purchased 40 ice creams, and it will split the emissions using the activity data rather than the spend, because in many ways that can be sort of a better way of calculating the emissions. So that will go into my calculation. I'll show you that in a second. Also, if, as we said, you didn't receive all the data back you wanted, or when you looked at the evidence files, it didn't necessarily seem reliable, you wasn't sure, you do have public disclosures. So you'll find most large companies on there if you've bought from like Microsoft, or a lot of your big suppliers, they'll probably be already on there as a public disclosure, or you can do a SIC code calculation. Essentially, you're entering the industry code and calculating the emissions based on that. You do have an option of a lot of different countries and different spend factors, all of them pulling from what Stephen showed earlier in the spend factors section. When you then complete your calculations, you start to see your data appear here. So you'll get your different reporting periods and you'll get your emissions. And if I follow through to the emission breakdown and look at my 2024 data, you'll see a table where you'll see what category it was calculated, currency, amount you spent, the reason you put in for the spend, and you'll start to see your emissions breakdown. It will tell you what method was used. So you had full scope 1, 2, and 3 here. There might be cases where you had the upstream scope 1, 2, and 3. So that's slightly better calculation, but you can see what method was used for each. And you can have, it's not just doing your purchase goods, you can also put in capital goods. I've also got transport and distribution. I've got a waste calculation here. So all of this data at the end can be exported. That will go to Excel where you can use it yourselves, or as I said, we can transfer that over to the Sustrax platform. The last thing you then get at the bottom here is the breakdowns in data. So you can start to see, okay, what reasons to spend was the majority of my emissions, and also what emission sources was I using. So in the first year, you might find that a lot of it does come from public disclosures and potentially estimations based on sector averages. But as you progress through the years, hopefully you get more supplier disclosures and data. So hopefully as you click through the years, you'll get more data, and that pie chart will be more of the blue colour. I believe that's everything here. So what we're doing now with the platform is, as I said, if you're on our Sustrax system, Sustrax MX or AX, let us know and we'll set you up your account and you're good to go. Some people are already using that. If you'd like a personalized demo for your company and a quote, do please reach out to myself or Stephen and we can get going on that. Passing back to John now, I believe.
Superb. Thank you very much, Miles. I'll take the screen back. Yeah, on that, it brings us to the Q&A session. So, I think Stephen, you've been keeping an eye on the questions questions that have been coming through. So maybe if you sort of scroll through and sort of read a few out, and we'll see which ones we can answer and which ones we can't.
We've got quite a lot of very good questions actually. But I'll start from around the top of the list. So the first one is, do we verify scope 1 and 2 emissions as a company, and what's the process for that and how long does it take?
So I can take that one. It's a relatively easy one. Yes, we do verify emissions. If you're already working with us, then have a chat to your account manager within Carbon Footprint. If not, and you're new to our company, then please do reach out to us and we can help you with that. The costs and time to do it depends a little bit on obviously the size of your company. If you're a small SME, it's obviously a lot easier to do it rather than if you're a big multinational organization, and the costs involved do vary. But if you've done the calculations for using our Sustrax software, once again, that's very easy for us to then verify. So we're happy to verify any emissions. We do that all the time. It's one of our core services. So please do get in contact with us, and we can have a chat to you about your business and give you a price for doing that.
Okay, so the next question we had is construction and end of life of the power plant facility included in the factors?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? No, it's not, and no. Then the UK government and other sources of emissions factors don't include that either. The reality is that the construction element is quite tiny compared to the carbon emissions associated with the energy, so it's probably in the noise anyway. But no, it's not. So we look at the fuel that's burnt, getting the well to tank bit looks at the emissions of getting the fuels to the power station, and the transmission and distribution part looks at the losses through the electricity grid, but they don't actually include the build of the power stations themselves. But like I say, it's pretty negligible compared to the amount of carbon emissions coming from the fuels that are burnt.
Okay, so this next one is a very popular question. We had quite a few likes on some of these ones, but it's to do with, as we used to have our Excel electricity factors on the website, basically what's happened to these and how can you access them now?
So so what we've done is we've obviously put all our data now onto the CaDI system, which makes it easier for us to control from a security point of view and update and manage, and it puts it out there for everybody all at the same time, which is great. The Excel versions are available. If you need an Excel version, then we do charge for that now. Another way for us to generate a little bit of funding to help maintain the system. But if you do need that, then give us a shout and we can help you with that, and we'll point you in the right direction for the past emissions factors as well. But the starting point is actually it's all online now on the CaDI platform.
Okay, so our next question is, do the factors support with market-based calculations? I believe this is in relation to the electricity factors.
Yes, so that's the residual mix part. So market-based is obviously, so there's for those that don't understand, there's location-based and there's market-based. Location-based is using the grid average factors, and that's why our factors are really, the majority of the factors are there to help with the location-based calculation. Market-based accounts for the specific energy that you're purchasing. So if you're buying from a renewable energy supplier, then obviously the carbon emissions could be zero or very close to being zero for each unit of electricity. However, if you're doing that you should be getting those market-based emissions from your energy provider, and often, certainly in the UK, it can be on the energy bills, so you can find it there. On the CaDI system for the UK bit, we did show you at the bottom that we have a data set for specific emissions factors per energy supplier as well, so you can find those there. And then the other final point of that is, if you're using market based and your energy suppliers emissions on some of your sites, and you've got more sites in different parts of the world, or even the same part of the world, then rather than using location based factors for those, you should use the residual mix factors. Otherwise you're benefiting, twice really. So yeah, so it can help you. So you, like I say, the UK, we've got the database underneath. You can also look at your suppliers fuel mixes, and then you've got the residual mix factors as well to help you with those market-based emissions. But if you need any help with it, then obviously give us a call. We're here. We're basically a team of carbon management consultants, so we're happy to help if you need any help with any of that.
Okay, so this next one's probably quite a tricky one, but how do you manage with the variance between conversion factors? And the example given is sort of the UK financial services figure compared to the US one, which is about 50% variance between the two.
Well, we use, obviously, that we've developed a methodology that we think works well for calculating the emissions factors, so we tend to use those for the international ones. There could obviously be variance between different sources of factors, and it can be down to which fuel mix they've used and other assumptions that they've used during their assessments. I'm not specifically aware of how those two examples calculate their specific carbon emissions and what data they've used. What we do is obviously spot check ours against other national factors, like I showed as ours against the UK government ones, and we know we're pretty much spot on where the UK government have updated theirs to be in line with the base year of data that we've assessed. I don't know. It's probably a more complicated question that probably needs an external discussion. If you need some help on choosing the correct emissions factors for the particular type of reporting that you're doing, then please come and have a chat to us, because different reporting schemes may have specific factors that they would like you to use. Not all, but if you do need some help, then come and have a chat to us.
Okay, so next question is, do you see being able to forecast estimated emission factors or grid mixes into the future?
Oh man, these are all international facts. No, well, we do that actually. So for anybody who's already working with us on target setting, that's one of the things that we do. So we do forecast factors for every country into the future to help us with target setting and help companies set net zero targets. So we do that. We haven't published it on CaDI yet, and maybe that's something that we could do in the future. The other thing that we can do is, like I say, already there is 2024 fuel mix data available, so we could effectively calculate what the emissions factors will be for 2026 now for many countries. So there's that element that we can do and we could do, and there's already the forecasting that we do for emissions factors. It's not on CaDI. We could think about how to do that and how to put it there. Maybe that's a question for me to take away. But if you are looking at how to forecast emissions because you're doing your own target setting and trying to get net zero targets set, then come and have a chat to us about that as well, because it's one of our specialities, is setting targets and forecasting carbon emissions into the future.
Okay, so the next one is, I think, to do with the more supplier specific fuel mixes, but it says some of the fuel mixes are zero. Do you still need proof of this when sort of calculating emissions in that category?
Yeah, well, it depends what you're reporting into and how you're reporting really. If you're a small company doing some voluntary reporting, then it's probably not that big a deal to just use the supplier information. Usually you can get evidence from the supplier, like say on a lot of energy bills now in the UK, for instance, it does show you what the emissions factor is for the fuel that you're using. So if you were to come to us for us to do a carbon assessment or a verification of your carbon emissions, we would usually ask to see that evidence to give us some confidence that it's correct. So basically, yeah, it's worth getting the evidence if you can. You get the evidence from your energy provider.
I think we've got a few kind of quick fire ones now, but do we have factors available for all 15 categories on CaDI of scope 3?
Happy to
Miles,
take
yeah,
this.
go for it.
Yeah, so a lot of what's on CaDI will cover the purchased goods. It will cover the spend. Can cover a lot of categories. There's a few that aren't necessarily covered on CaDI, but can be found in public places like waste factors, for example. They're all on the Defra factors, so we haven't uploaded them necessarily straight in here. But yeah, folks, a lot of this data is on sort of the harder to get categories. Your sort of category 1, category 2 capital goods. A lot of focus there, but they can be used in other areas. So yeah, it does cover quite a broad spectrum. If you have questions on particular categories that you're struggling with, do let us know and we can help out on those.
Okay, next one is, do we help with CBAM, product carbon footprints and SBTI?
Yes, we do. We provide services for all of those things. I think I've seen other questions on the chat about our product footprints. Can you upload your own to the system? There's not currently a way that you can directly upload from what I'm aware, but if you contact us, we're happy to publish any onto the platform, and all of our customers we're already offering and they're starting to publish, but we are adding a form very soon to allow you to go straight on and add your own products. But yeah, so you keep an eye on the product area because there will be more products going on there. And we're always open to databases. So if you see a database, do contact us. Let us know if you think it'd be useful to have on there. There's certain databases we can't use because there's policies and we need to check that we're allowed to sort of publish them. But yeah, we're always interested in new databases. So do reach out.
Okay, so there's another sort of Excel-based one, but it's whether it's possible to provide an updated factors spreadsheet. So all the latest ones on CaDI, I guess, if we can provide an export of that, if that's available.
Yeah, we can provide that. We do charge a small fee for that. It's tiny actually, but if you do need that and that would make your lives easier, then do contact us, and we'd sort that out for you. It comes with a small license agreement of how to use them as well.
So I think this next one's to do with the supplier form that we ran through, but it's how is the industry category defined on that one? So on that drop down when you're selecting the SIC category.
Yeah, so they are linked closely with the UK's industry codes. We do provide a link on the form. So if you're not in the UK, just so you can get an idea of the type of category they go under. So there's a way to sort of search up your own company if you're in the UK, but also to look for the same one, because America uses slightly different names for them, but they're often kind of, you can line them up quite easily. So there is a case where we are using one standard industry code for the UK, not necessarily sort of the American one, but yeah, that we do provide sort of details and guidance in there to help people find which one they have.
Okay, next one is, how do we apportion a supplier's emissions when we use them for a week or two or longer on a specific project?
It's a good question. So a lot of what we're doing in the platform, you'd find out what their total turnover is and what their emissions are, and you'd look at the amount of emissions per. What you can also ask them for an activity metric, if it's like an event and they have 52 weeks, they might give you the emissions per week of use. So yeah, it kind of depends. I would chat to them, and when you're sending out the email, you might say, oh, because we use you for this service, can you provide your activity metric in line with what we need, because then the tool will help you apportion it. But yeah, it does depend on sort of what service you're using with them.
Okay, I'm just quite conscious of time here, so I think we've just got time for one more question. We'll go for this one, as we didn't hugely touch on it earlier, but is when looking for existing company disclosures, does this have to be manually searched on your platform one by one?
Yes, I did see that, and I also saw a question about APIs, which kind of have a nice link. So currently they do need to be searched, so you'll go through that calculation section, you'll choose it. we can help and provide sort of consultancy time to help you line stuff up if you need. But we're also looking, it's a future roadmap item, at sort of API access into the platform, both for, I saw someone ask about receiving international electricity factors for an API. That's something we're looking at, but also for sort of bulk uploading of data into the platform, potentially API access. All of them are on the roadmap for the future. So if you contact me, I can put you on like a wait list and we'll sort of get in touch when they're available. But yeah, that's currently you are inputting, so you'll get your supply data back and you will need to produce the calculations. We did consider putting, so you put the spend at the start, then when you get the supply data back, it automatically calculates. But there's cases where you might want to put 2 spend things in, you want to split that between 2 greenhouse gas categories. And so there's a few things we had to think about to try and make it so you can potentially do multiple calculations from one disclosure. So that's why it's formatted in that way.
Cool. Thank you very much, Miles. Thanks, Stephen, for reading out those. I think we've actually slightly overrun time, so we're going to have to pull the webinar to an end, I'm afraid. So if there were any other questions, what we'll do is we'll go through those on the chat and we'll come back to you individually on those. So thank you for all your questions. There's some really great ones there, and thanks for Stephen and Miles for the great answers as well, especially to those I can answer. All I've got to say is that thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll put the, like I say, we'll put the YouTube video out there, and send you the link so you can watch it again, share it with your friends, like and all that. And yeah, thank you very much and have a great weekend.